Okay, so I'm out here with Chris Hatch from the Model 3 Challenge. Do you want to talk about what that is?
Yeah, so basically the Model 3 Challenge is sort of a grassroots, accessible motorsport event where people take their Model 3s and they come out to the track and we sort of race them competitively.
Nice.
So sort of the, things that we have to take into consideration is we limit the power, because if you try to run the cars at full power for an extended period of time, they start to limit the amount of power you can run, and then before you know it, you're at like half power, which isn't a whole lot of fun.
Yep.
So we limit them to about 300 horsepower, and they can maintain that throughout a 15-minute race. But yeah, I mean, really, kind of what brought it about is the cars are obviously really good daily drivers, and I think pretty much anyone that owns one knows that. But they also, do really well on the track. And I don't think people know that as much. So we sort of wanted to, meld this idea of having a daily driver that can do both, do it in a competitive fashion with similar vehicles. And, really what it comes down to is it's the driver, right? It's not just who's got the most money or the fastest car, but, really it's about who's got the most talent. And if you look at other series like Spec Miata or Spec E30 or something like that, these are series where they embody that same idea where it's like, we want it to be about the driver and not just about the car. But, it's also a car that you don't need a truck and you don't need a trailer and you don't need this whole production to go have a good time. You can drive the car there and then you can drive the car home, and I think that's a really big reason why someone would, choose to do this.
And I see you have the new Model 3 Performance. Does someone need to have a Performance Model 3 if they want to join this?
No, actually. So yeah, we recently acquired this lovely thing and still sort of doing testing and development on it, and it's coming along quickly. We need to really validate everything before Lime Rock. But no, you don't need a performance. So part of the benefit to limiting the power is that, if you've got a dual motor, or even some variations of like the Standard Range Plus or the long range rear wheel drive, you can still run the car at that same power level and, compete. So we wanted to really make it accessible, right? It's not just, again, do you have the most money for the best, fastest car? No, you can have a rear wheel drive and still have fun, participate, and be competitive.
Are there any kind of modifications you need to do? Or can you just like...
So there's a couple required modifications that are mostly A, for safety, and B, again, to sort of level the playing field. So all the cars you'll find have a high voltage interlock loop disconnect. And so basically what that does is when that switch gets flipped and it's mounted externally, so it can be accessed by safety crew or track workers or whoever is nearby, it forces open the contactors and basically isolates the high voltage battery from the rest of the car.
Okay.
So that is just something that we've implemented to make everybody else feel safe and know that there's sort of a way to.
It's kind of like the fireman switch.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's the same thing, except you just flip a switch instead of having to like pop the hood and disconnect everything or cut something. Obviously, we don't want to just go snipping things. So it's just an easy way to accomplish the same thing.
So if someone is like complete novice, they're just used to driving their car and they want to get it started, what kind of training would they have to do?
So we do recommend or sort of require, it depends on how much experience they have, but 8 just high performance driving events. So that's kind of similar to what we're doing today. There's a lot of different places around the country that offer these high performance driving events, and it's really focused on education. It's about teaching you the limits of the car, teaching you how to be a better driver, and the focus is on having fun safely. And so once you've got a number of those under your belt, and you're going to be safe on the track with everybody else, that's sort of when you can, join the competition. We also just started this year doing club events, which is really more open. It's just like a pretty basic time attack. So just kind of show up with what you got and go have fun. So the only requirements there are brake pads and fluid. Otherwise, you can just take the car as is. And that's really more focused towards like, again, just get out there and have fun. Have a good time, do it safely. But it's a less competitive environment. You're not feeling so much like the pressure.
So what do you think like the cost to entry between like upgrades to the car, maybe like getting on the track, helmets and stuff?
So yeah, the required modifications, so we've got that disconnect. You need at least pads and fluid for the brakes because out of the box they're just not great. And then we've got that cooling party controller made by Mountain Pass that limits the power. So once you get all of that, you can get that all done for about $500 if you rent the controller for the event. The entry fee for the event, it really depends on the track itself. When we did Canaan, it was $450 for a ticket for 2 days.
Okay.
Whereas like, you go to track like Laguna Seca and it's more like $1,200. So, there's a variance there. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'd probably figure between, hotel, the event, the stuff you need, you're going to spend $1,500 probably for a weekend.
Nice. Should we go for a drive?
Let's do it.
All right.
So we've got the new Model 3 Performance here, and yeah, so I think as a daily driver, it's a pretty significant improvement over the outgoing model. Just in general, the sort of noise, vibration, harshness is quite a bit better with the double pane glass all around, the adaptive dampers if you choose to keep them. Definitely just, you can tell like the bushings are a little bit softer.
Yeah, much smoother.
Yeah, it's definitely smoother, quieter. And, I think the interior changes are pretty significant. It's definitely more premium, more luxury feeling. So I definitely think from the perspective of, just a daily driver, they took the Model 3, which was already, really, really good, but, maybe didn't feel quite the price, so to speak.
Yep.
And, I think they really took it to the next level and made it just a lot more appealing for, your average buyer. And again, just having that reduced noise, that reduced, harshness, because the suspension of the older cars was, especially the early ones, was like pretty bad.
Yeah.
It's very juddery, it was very bouncy, and you just like felt like you felt everything on the road. And so it's a lot more subtle now. It's a lot smoother and just nicer for the driver and for the passengers as well. But yeah, I mean, it's a great car. Even the old ones are great cars, just as a daily driver. I mean, you can put 50,000 miles in the car and change the wiper blades and the cabin filters. And
yeah, you can drive to work and then go to the track afterwards.
Exactly, yeah. No, it dual purposes extremely well, which not a lot of cars can say that. Generally you've got a lot of compromises. The brakes are horrifically loud. Well, with regenerative braking, you let that do 90% of the work, the brakes don't really make any noise. So I think if you've ever had a track car with an internal combustion engine, it's really annoying to drive on the street with track pads.
Yeah.
But, with regen, this is a total non-issue, so.
And then just the cost difference. You don't need a truck with a trailer to tow it.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Generally, if you want to go racing, you've got a caged car. You either can't or it's totally impractical driving on the street. So now you got to invest in a truck and a trailer. And, towing is a pretty big hassle. So, all these sort of factors that normally would just be sort of a big nuisance, you've eliminated. So, it's really not that hard to just drive this thing to the track. You hit the supercharger if you need to, and, it just makes it easy. I'd say the one sort of drawback is the charging. Mm-hmm. It's not quite as easy as just dumping 10 gallons or 20 gallons of fuel into the tank. So, that's something to take into consideration. But, there are tracks now that have superchargers on site. Laguna Seca, Buttonwillow, Thunderhill, and Atlanta Motorsports Park. So it's not like, it's not gonna happen. It's already happening. And, it's gonna take some time for sure, but, I think we'll get to the point where more and more tracks are saying, hey, we need to do this too. And at that point, you plug in between sessions, you don't even think about it. It's super, super easy. So that's really where I see it going, and I certainly look forward to that day. The supercharger here is only about 15 minutes away, but it's still a bit of a hassle. I'd rather not have to drive to charge the car. Again, if you can only own one car, or if you just don't want to deal with all the hassle and the bullcrap of having a track car, this will do both really, really well at a reasonable cost, and you can still have a lot of fun. And I think there's very few cars that can take all those boxes, right? A BMW M3, a new M3, a G80 is a great car, but you're spending almost $100,000 on it.
Yeah.
This is literally like half the price, so it's kind of like, okay, not really apples to apples there. But yeah, the new one, I'd say like the main differences that I've noticed, the cooled seats are actually super nice.
Yeah, I was noticing that on the track. It felt amazing.
Yeah, you know, it's just like, oh, it's just taking all this heat away from me. So that's nice. The big bolsters that we've got now are really nice because the old seats, like, you just were sliding around constantly, left, right. You're fighting the seat the whole time. So that's a big improvement. You know, the rear motor is a bit more powerful, and it can sustain the power for longer. So it's not a dramatic difference by any means. I mean, a Plaid is still light years faster.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is a noticeable improvement. And then, you know, it looks really good. You know, I think at first, you know, you see it and you're like, oh, it looks a little weird because it's not something that you've seen before.
Yeah.
But, you know, pretty quickly you're like, oh, wow, that's, like, you put the new one and the old one side by side and you're like,
so much more aggressive.
yeah, it's a lot better. So I really think that they were able to, you know, make a lot of improvements with the car while also, you know, the cost has not changed. And I mean, really, even, you know, from a couple of years ago, it's gone down quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, you know, combine that with the tax credits, and it's just like, all right, well,
why not?
how do you argue with this? I mean, you know, people were paying mid-60s for a, you know, performance just a couple of years ago, and, you know, now you can get the same car for less than 50 grand. So when you think about how much inflation has affected people in the last couple of years, and the price of the cars have come down, it's pretty impressive. Goal of creating the series was to, you know, really make a series that was accessible to normal people who wanted to, you know, go compete and, you know, just have fun and bring the community together. Because, you know, there was a lot. What I found is there's a fair amount of people doing this, but it was like they were all in their own little silos.
Yeah.
And, you know, we talk amongst ourselves, but it was not that many people, like, doing it together. So it's also a way to sort of, like, you know, really bring the enthusiasts that like this stuff all together to have a good time.
And then geographically, are you guys limited to New England, or are you over the country?
No, so last year we ran Laguna Seca and Willow Springs, which are out in California.
Yep.
And this year we're doing Laguna Seca and Thunderhill,
Nice.
which are out in California. So right now it's sort of like the two, like it's the East Coast and the West Coast, basically. Now in the future we'd love to expand beyond that, but that's sort of where the density of owners is at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, trust me, if we could, you know, add in all these different sorts of little regions throughout time, that'd be great. But you know, we just need the demand there to do that.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm sure, like, proximity to charging stations plays a role in that.
yeah, absolutely. So Laguna Seca and Thunderhill both have charging on site, which
That's
is
awesome.
a game changer. It makes life so easy. But Lime Rock, you know, again, it's about 15 minutes away. We pretty much just drove there and back.
Yep.
And you know, so it's totally manageable. Anything beyond 15 minutes is where it sort of starts to become like a hassle. You know, if you have to drive a half an hour to charge, it's a bit of a pain.
Yeah. Then you're missing your track times and stuff.
Exactly. But yeah, the nice thing with the Model 3 Challenge is we try to space out the sessions, so it gives people plenty of time to charge in between. We also cap the starting SOC at 90%, so that, you know, you're not just sitting on the charger waiting, you know, to turbo charge that last 10%.
Yeah.
And because we're running lower power, the cars aren't going through the energy nearly as quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I can go out and do 5 laps and use like 30% of the battery.
Yeah.
So, you know, it goes pretty quick when you're really pushing it.
All right, so we just saw what the Model 3 is like on the road. Let's see what it's like on the track. just went on the track in the new Performance Model 3. Incredible. First time on the track, first time in the Performance. Thank you, Chris, for taking me.
No problem. Glad you had fun.